to the first episode of the Perception of Perception podcast. We are coming to you from the Solano College TV studio, and I am your moderator today. I am AJ. I am joined by Adrian, Donovan, and Camille, and let's get right into it. So, everybody, perception, right? We're first going to be talking about external. So external perception, as I've come to know it, is how we see the world with our senses, sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch.
Yeah.
So
and not everybody has all those five senses.
Yeah, not everyone will have all five senses.
Mm-hmm.
Some are short of few and affected by different ways. So Donovan, what would you think is the most important sense when it comes to communication?
I'd say the most important sense when it comes to communication is definitely your sense of talking.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like without talking or just communication is just out the window. Obviously you have sign language and body language, but I think the most important one is talking.
So I would say that your most important sense when you're communicating with someone is your hearing, because if you have to talk to someone and they're writing everything down, you're missing a lot of things because you don't have their emotional connotation of their words. Someone could be saying something sarcastically or maybe in a mean, angry sort of way, or maybe they're saying it in a friendly way, but it all looks the same when you put it down on paper. So yeah, I would say talking. What about you, Camille?
I think that sight is the most important, just because I would want to see someone's eye contact or their body language. I feel like body language is a big part of communication, and if I couldn't see that someone was more laid back when I was talking about something really important, then that obviously alter my ability to communicate with them.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, for you two, you both said hearing and talking, right? How would the ability, if say you were deaf, how would that really affect your ability to communicate?
I think if you were deaf, it would affect the ability to communicate, because obviously you can't hear anyone and what they're saying. You could read their lips, but to me, I would want to hear their tone and how they're saying it back to me compared to what they're just saying, because I think it's just it shows how affected they are, or it just shows us or me when they're talking to me and their tone. It shows me that if they're mad or if they're sad, I can pick up a lot of cues from the tone in general than just what they're saying. So,
And if I were deaf, say born deaf, I would say that my biggest shortcoming would be, like I said, hearing other people's tones of voice. And I would also add that if someone were to try and describe something to me, like the sound something made, like if they said, oh, that person started screaming and hollering, I might have an idea of the concept of screaming in my head. I might be able to say, okay, screaming, they did something that was loud, something that disturbed everyone around them, but I would have no frame of reference for that myself. So what could it truly mean to me if someone told me that someone else was screaming? I would not be able to have ever heard that in my life.
And then you said sight. So how would you losing the ability to see affect your ability to communicate, do you think?
I did kind of want to backpack on what Adrian said, though, about the hearing. I thought about something new. For example, you wouldn't be able to understand certain danger, for example. Let's say there's a siren, a police siren going on, or an ambulance. If you lost your hearing, you wouldn't be able, that doesn't mean anything to you, but to other people that it will. So I just thought that was pretty interesting too.
And that's kind of with ambulances or fire trucks, they do have the visual lights, but they do also have the sirens as kind of a fail-safe for one or the other.
Yeah, because sometimes you only can hear them. You hear them before you see them most of the time.
And then that kind of leads into a article that I found by Amar Shankar Mishra. They talk about how a deaf and blind person, since we've kind of established for ourselves that we think that those are the most important or most crucial senses when it comes to communicating, can they communicate? Do they communicate, and like will they ever communicate? And I think that's a really interesting thought going on it, because as we've said, that is a big portion of how we communicate is sight and hearing. And if we can't hear or see, like, can we communicate?
Yeah.
But that kind of like, what other things go into being able to communicate?
I definitely say if you lose your sight or your hearing, definitely think those are your main communication points. I think once you lose those, your main reliability towards communication would definitely be touch. But other than that aspect, when you lose your main communication aspects, then it'd be really difficult. But I'd say definitely touch would probably be like the new main sense you have to rely on for communication.
I would like to add for you guys' consideration my own article that I found titled Russian Blues Reveal Effects of Language on Color Discrimination. So in Russia, or in the Russian language I should say, they have two very distinct words for the color blue. They have light blue and they have dark blue. And to them, these are two completely different colors, the same way that you and I might look at red or green. And I thought that was really interesting because it's almost like the language that these people is speaking affects the way that their brains discriminate between colors. It affects the way that they actually see the world and how they process the information. So if you started speaking Russian and you went over to Russia to try and explain to them the concept of the greater blue, they would have no idea what you're saying because that concept just does not exist to them. They might be able to understand it, to grasp it, and to say like, yeah, I get it. You have this color blue and it's both of these things combined together. But they would not perceive that for themselves. They would never look at the color blue and say blue. They would always say light blue, dark blue. And I thought that was interesting how, these languages come around, formed off people's perceptions, but then because those perceptions are baked into the language, further down the line, future generations will also see the world in that different way because of how the people before them saw the world.
I definitely think that's pretty interesting because, like, us growing up here, we see shades and colors as like light blue, dark blue, like those are the same shade of blue.
Yeah.
But I definitely find it interesting how in another world or another country, they will see light blue and dark blue as two completely different colors.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Their language creates a discretion where we would see something as continuous,
Yeah.
as the same. They see it as different. And I also saw something else that was really interesting. To the Pomo people of California, they're a native tribe. They have in their own language 3 descriptors for color. They have light, dark, and red. And they do not see hues of color. They do not see green. They do not see blue. They do not see red. These do not exist to them at all. They only see whether or not that object is in light or if it is in shadow. And they would describe many various things as being the exact same color. Like this table, they'd say it's dark. These chairs are dark. My jacket's dark. Even though all these things are completely different colors, and we would describe them as differently, they see them as all part of one bigger group. So you could say that language creates distinctions and commonalities, and there's all these different discretions and categories that separate us when we try and bridge the language gap and talk to each other and find some common ground.
Building off of that, going off of the different ways that we can show differences, that is kind of like how communication isn't just spoken, it isn't just visual, it's a mix of everything, I wear cologne, so that's a scent that kind of gives off a way that I express myself. This hoodie I'm wearing is a way that I externally express myself. The way you decided to put on the outfit you're wearing that's something that you would wear, that's your way that you express yourself.
I think everyone, like you're saying, everybody has their different way of expressing themselves, either through its clothes or, like you said, cologne. Like I could wear like a fruitier cologne
Mhm.
because that would match my personality, but you would wear a more, I'd say like a spicier
Yeah.
cologne because it can show like, I'd say when it's spicier, it's more masculine. It's more, it's masculine. But when
Mhm.
you wear something fruity, it's more fresher. It's more like it's not your typical, I'd say male appeal,
Mhm.
but you're showing that through your smell, if that makes sense. So I think that's
Especially with something like that, it can also be like a kind of vibe you're trying to give off.
yeah.
You know, so like if you're going out and about for the day, you might wear something fresher versus like if you're going like out at night, going to a bar or something, you know, you might wear something that stands out a little bit more to try and like not necessarily control the room, but
Yeah.
make your presence known.
Yeah, very known. Yeah.
So would you say that the cologne that you wear, even though it has to do with smell and not hearing or seeing,
Mhm.
would you say that that is a form of communication because you're expressing something?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, going from external to internal now,
Right.
you know, we kind of have our own, or I guess external is more focused on the senses, versus internal, I'd say, is more focused on emotions. And in a way, our emotions are kind of our senses internally.
Yeah.
They're like, if we process our senses, we would get our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And for my external, I went with how we communicate with other people. And then with my own internal, I said that it's all about how one person sees things and how one brain on a smaller scale can take in all these senses and then use language kind of as the framework to place those ideas in their mind and get everything sorted out and situated and get their worldview together. And then external communication is just on the bigger scale, all those minds and those people with their own understanding of the world coming together to share those views.
It's kind of like a pyramid, like upside down pyramid. How
Mhm.
like external is more broad, and then we get to like internal, it starts to narrow down.
Yeah. I definitely think that like in general differences, like your birthplace or where you come from, it can definitely create like almost like a stereotype, or like what you grew up in is what you want, if that makes sense. Like let's say if you grew up in like a richer neighborhood, you're gonna be drawn to things specifically like that. If you grew up around people who are, I'd say like mean or outgoing, you're gonna be outgoing. Or if you grew up somewhere near somebody like mean, you're gonna be, I'd say you're used to someone mean. Like compared to someone who isn't grown up to that, they're like, they'd stay away from someone, I'd say, yelling in like the street or anything like that. If you grew up next to someone who's mean, then you have more of an option to just like try to control the situation. And yeah, I think just definitely like where you grew up in shows like your internal personality, if that makes sense.
I think a big part also is your culture. Like for example, in Asian culture, I know a lot of my family members, they think that direct eye contact is disrespectful.
Right.
And I feel like that shapes a lot of how you have an outlook on life and also how you communicate with yourself. Because using my example again of direct eye contact, I would refrain from having eye contact with people because of how I was raised. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
And there's kind of like a complete opposite world with different cultures. How it's like disrespectful to not like share eye contact.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like you often hear some like in shows and stuff, a parent will be talking to a kid and they'll say, "Look at me when I'm talking to
Yeah.
you."
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it just kind of just shows that you're not paying attention to
Mhm.
them, but yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
It's also like, very interesting the different worlds that can affect someone's view on life.
Yeah.
And we're able to also notice changes in perception within ourselves. We're able to induce these things. Like, for example, I once took a psychedelic drug.
Yeah.
And before that going in, I was level-headed. I had an idea of what it was that I would see. And at the time, seeing all those things seemed crazy to me. seeing all sorts of patterns on the walls, and the walls are melting. It seemed insane. But then when I was actually under the influence of that drug, and I had all those things happening to me, and I was having all these weird thoughts and seeing all these different, to me they look like divine entities, it just seemed completely normal, because the receptors in my brain worked with the drug in such a way that it fully changed how I saw reality. So what came first was me accepting that I'm seeing these things, and then those things came afterwards. So it's very interesting that you can have such an extreme shift within yourself, and then be able to look back on that shift and see how exactly your brain changed to find certain things normal, or how it might have changed to find some things abnormal, and then being able to compare the two states.
And I'd say that reminds me a lot of like schizophrenia.
Right.
I'd say like it takes them out of reality, and they just start to see a bunch of
Yeah.
things that they're not used to, or like things that just aren't real. And that brings me to my source, where according to the article of Psychosis as a State of Aberrant Salience by Kshitij Kapoor, schizophrenia may cause the brain to assign importance to stimuli that would normally seem insignificant, helping explain why perception of reality can become distorted under certain conditions. So I think that it's just interesting that with this condition, and like just how their brain chemistry works, they just start to see things that just aren't real, and that just it just isn't a part of reality. And I just think it's interesting that they can see that other people can't.
And to them, it is completely real.
Yeah.
What they're seeing. Like, if you took someone who's schizophrenic and they told you, like, oh, I can't shower because there's a microphone in the bathroom, it doesn't matter if that's true or not. You can take them in there, take everything apart and show them, look, there's no microphone. They have that faulty perception in their brain that's changed, that's added some connection in their wiring to make them think that. And you have to act with them like it is real.
Yeah.
And say, well, I don't know what the hell you'd say to them in that situation, but you'd have to work around it. You'd have to talk about it. Be like, no, the microphone, it's not there.
Yeah.
It only turns on every Wednesday
Yeah.
when I'm in the shower, so it's good.
Yeah,
I'll
you would have to
shower
come
every
up with
Wednesday.
either some excuse, but I know some people, some typically if they suffer schizophrenia, I know typically they would record it, and the next morning they would have to watch the video and there would be nothing there. And I know that's like a very mind twisting thing for them, because like for them they see it and they know this is real, like this is apparent, like I can see
And
everything.
then they have to look back and then confront that idea that it's not real.
It's not
that
real.
that their head is creating a new reality
Yeah.
for them.
I think it just goes to show that perception is such a big part of communication, because you have to share visually also what they see to understand what they're saying too.
Yeah.
So.
That is it is very wild that, because like I assume most of us do not have schizophrenia.
Yeah. Right.
And we may never experience anything like that in our lives.
Mhm.
So we can't comprehend it, because we don't, there's no way we can comprehend it,
Yeah.
because we won't experience it.
Yeah.
So how do you even treat a person like that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
How do you even help them?
And that's where communication is a very big thing,
Yeah.
because you have to try and make sense of it in kind of any way you can.
Yeah.
So like you were saying with them recording it, that's like a way that they're kind of communicating
With
to
themselves.
Yeah.
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 To try and show themselves that there's nothing
There's
there.
nothing there,
And it's kind of back to with emotions, that can cause a very big spike in anxiety, and that can a lot of the time with disorders like this, the more anxiety that you have, the worse it becomes. And it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, how you get anxious because of it, so it causes it a little bit more, and that causes more, so it's just kind of like an infinite
just a
loop.
cycle.
It's just a
Yeah.
cycle.
Yeah.
And that's with an article that I found by Dr. Jean Olav Johannesson, from his article from Taylor and Francis Online. He talks about how it's important for us, that like we understand that we have been given these emotions and feelings for a reason.
Yeah.
And they are there to try and help us go through life.
Yeah.
So like the reason someone might feel anxious about that is to try and help them live to see the next day.
Yeah.
Even though they don't, like there's nothing there, but to them there is. So that anxiety and that fear is there to try and push them forward to, it's the fight or flight in you.
Yeah, they kind of have
It's a
to.
survival response.
Mhm.
Yeah, they have to learn how to adapt to it. It's something that you have to realize, like, okay, even though it's not here, this is the reality I have to deal with. I have to realize that no matter how anxious or scared I get, like, this isn't really here. I think they use their anxiety and their fear to kind of, I'd say they use it to try to escape it in a way. But like I said, with the camera, they end up showing that, okay, it's not there. This is their proof. This is the way they show themselves that this is not real. So
I feel like it would change a lot with how I would communicate with myself too. I feel like it would create a lot of insecurity, and I wouldn't trust a lot of things that I do. And I feel like that would also go into how I communicate with other people too. And I would refrain because, oh, what if that's not real? So.
That kind of reminds me of a story that I heard a while ago of this guy who he had a coworker, and he was like constantly complaining about his neighbors, and he was like they were being so loud, and he would like call the cops on them to like get a noise complaint going to try and like get documentation to try and like show to his like landlords, hey, these guys are a problem, can like we do something about this. And then one day his coworker, like, he just stopped showing up to work. Yeah. And like a few months later, he shows up to work, and his coworker's back, and he's like, oh, where have you been? What's been going on? And he's like, yeah, so those neighbors I was telling you about, I called the cops again, and they basically told me that we've never received a call from you. You don't have a neighbor that lives where you're talking about, and that he he's making a false report.
yeah,
But to him, that's real.
To him,
That's his
you just got
reality.
dickhead neighbors.
Yeah. And so he ended up getting going to a psychiatric facility, and they diagnosed him with schizophrenia. And he was gone for months trying to like figure out a way to like work around it.
Yeah.
So it's almost to say as if we're all viewing this one reality, but there are differences in how we view it, and we can even view extreme differences in that, in the case where a brain just makes up reality.
Mm-hmm.
And we can view that, and then we can look at that difference and take a step back and say these differences are present in everybody. We'll all see things slightly different. So how do we use language, which is there to describe things? How do we perfectly describe something and assign the correct emotional baggage to that, so that the other person understands it in a way that we do?
That it almost feels impossible to do that,
Yeah.
because from like my life, I'll never be able to experience your life.
Yeah.
I'll never be able to see things from your eyes.
Hmm.
Like I'm wearing all black to me, and my black is my black, but
Yeah.
to you, my black could be your green
Mm-hmm.
or my green, but I would never know, because
Yeah.
to you that's black, and this is black to me.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. How like that blue and orange could be completely flipped for me,
Mm-hmm.
but like our way of seeing it through our eyes and how we grew up with it is just like my orange is my blue, but for him his orange is his blue.
You
I
just
think-
have the label of the name of the color there.
Yeah, you just have the
to
label.
anchor you there.
Yeah.
But you don't really know.
Yeah.
And that
Yes. Sorry, you were gonna say?
no, go ahead.
Oh, well, I thought you were going to go to the next segment.
Yeah.
I was going to say this broadness and this openness to interpretation in reality is also what fuels our need to make art.
Mm-hmm. And that does lead us to our next segment, which is art.
Yeah.
so going back to the colors that we were just talking about, you know, that you can do so much with the different colors.
Yeah.
You know, like for paintings as examples, you know, certain colors can invoke specific emotions in certain people.
Red is anger.
Red
or
is
it could mean
anger.
Fear.
Mhm.
Like blue is sadness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yellow could be calm versus like someone who has gone through a certain trauma or something that involves the color like blue. They could get like fear
Yeah.
from that because of something they've experienced.
Yeah, I know. I don't specifically remember what museum, but there was a museum in San Antonio. It had like a orb helmet, and it would just lift on top of you, and it would just express a bunch of different colors. And those colors were supposed to like affect you. Like, let's say red. You see the color red all around you, I'm just gonna start feeling angry. If I see the color blue, I'm just gonna start feeling incredibly sad. But I think that's interesting to me that I wasn't thinking about anything. I wasn't seeing anything but these colors, and it was affecting my emotions in that sense.
Yeah.
So I definitely think like colors and painting and art definitely have a big effect in emotions. So
Yeah, it's the elements in a painting, the different colors that are used, what figures are in what form or in what focus. It's like communicating words, because that artist has their own message and idea that they're trying to get across, and they know that you have an emotional baggage towards certain colors, so they're going to use those colors to put that message in your head. And it's just like if they knew you had a certain emotional attachment to some words, they're going to use those words to try and get to you. It's just a different mode of communication, essentially.
Yeah.
Making art.
And like not just paintings or like drawings. You know, there's so many forms of art out there. There's like books, there's cooking, movies, music. Like anything under the sun pretty much could be considered art.
Yeah.
Like the clothes we're wearing, art.
Mhm.
The table, that could be a piece of art.
yeah, and I definitely think like especially with music, an artist can say something and the listeners can completely perceive that a whole different way, you know. And I do think that's, or especially with music, not even just the lyrics, but just how the music sounds. So like with movies, I know they'll play a certain type of music to express what's going on in the situation. So like let's say if I'm angry, they'll play like hard trombones and like just like a destructive soundtrack, compared to when I'm sad it'll be like a light violin or something. So it expresses the emotions through music and sound. So
Yeah, and what you're saying about an artist, like the lyrics of a song saying something and then having a meaning to it, that you can play with that in art. Like, you know, the band Outkast, their song Hey Ya. Yeah, you know about it. Say it. The lyrics of that song are so sad.
yeah.
They're about a broken relationship, but the song has been painted over with happiness, with a happy instrumental and some singing lyrics, and even the music video is a bunch of people dancing and having fun.
Yeah.
So it's intentional on the artist to put forth this emotional connotation of being a happy song and putting happy thoughts into your brain with upbeat music, but then hiding something darker beneath the different layers of it, sort of controlling how you perceive that thing.
I think it's also interesting that, for example, like when you're reading a book, there's no tone coming from the author. It's just what you're reading in your head. Like you could interpret a certain character to be one way, but AJ could interpret it to be another way. So I feel like that sense of communication, it's more like individualized rather than coming from the author itself. It's like you have to shape your own reality or your own perception of the book when you're reading.
Yeah. And like off yours with the music, and kind of like off yours, just I know a song. It was "I'm Blue, I'm in Need of the."
Yeah.
Like he's singing it with an upbeat type of tone, but him physically saying, "Oh, I'm blue," is showing like I'm sad. I'm in need of something.
He ain't got
But it- yeah.
nobody to
Yeah.
listen to. I'm blue.
Yeah, like it's a catchy upbeat song, but he's quite literally saying he's sad about something.
Yeah.
So I think that
And about books. Books are good because it plays on that interpretation. Like what we said, you all interpret an object as being something different. Why not turn that into art? You know, when you read a scene in a book, everyone's going to picture that in their head a certain way. Or when you describe a character, everyone's going to have a different vision of that character. And, you know, books are good because they're open to interpretation like that. And especially in books, artists with their prose can portray concepts and things that are complicated and abstract and larger than life. And these are things that if someone tried to make a movie about that book, they couldn't put that into the movie because it's all in words. It's all in the interpretation of the person reading it. You can't put that onto a screen with colors.
That could also be like with directors and screenwriters omitting parts of movies
Right.
or of books into their movies, because one scene could be so hard to depict properly, or to the screenwriters it may be a totally insignificant scene to them, versus like the author or a reader being like, that was the most powerful scene in this entire arc.
Yeah. Yeah, and I definitely think, especially with movies, I know with Brother Bear, it can just seem like a normal movie about just two bears becoming brothers or just traveling along trying to find his mother. But with other people, it could signify like a journey of change, and it can signify just a journey of love and just like going through things that you're not used to, and things you're not used to, but you'd have to adapt to just to change for the better, if that makes sense.
That is also like kind of going along with the idea that like 1,000 people could view the same thing and take something completely different from this. One person may really love a song, and then one person can like despise the song.
Yeah.
And there's like hundreds of people in between. Like, it's an alright song. It's a good song. I really like this lyric. I hate this lyric.
And on this article that I found by Rubaiyati Endishaw titled "Books vs. Movies: The Age-Old Debate," it goes into this thing about how books can be more descriptive. You know, when you have a character walk into a scene, the book can show you, you know, oh, he was with the wooden pillars and the brick bases, and he was with the black table and the shelf. And books can focus on these details and make you think about them and what they mean for the symbolism of the scene. Whereas a movie, you know, that's just the room that they're in. It's just a set. A character walks in and does their thing. So it's almost like books and movies, they can tell the same story, but they have to focus on different details, and they have different ways of showing you emotions. Like if you're watching a horror movie, and you know how it goes. They're creeping through the dark, all silent. It's building up the suspense, and then the monster jumps out at you, and everything goes scary in the theater. Well, imagine that in the book. You're just reading it like,
And it jumps out, and you just
it's not really that scary.
Yeah.
So movies can be more explicit with their emotions that they have you, you know, emotions that they bring you, whereas a book can make you focus on the details and the meaning and the symbolism more.
And that's I just watched Harry Potter for the first time, like recently, and I was talking to my friend about it, and I was like, you know, I think that the movies were pretty good, and he was like, compared to the books, you know, you don't really get as much depth with a lot of the characters, because, you know, with a movie, there's not always a great way to show a character's internal monologue, whereas like in a scene where it's like two characters talking, in the book it'll be like a sentence, a whole paragraph of like, here's what I'm thinking about.
He was shaking, he was sweating, he was thinking about this and that, and the movie just has to show you that.
Yeah, and it's a really difficult way to incorporate everything into one cohesive thing without omitting things.
Yeah, movies are more of like a visual, like showing like, oh, let's say someone's sweating. The movie's just gonna show that person sweating, but with a book, they're gonna describe how they feel, what it, like how slimy they are, how hot it is. Like I definitely get how books are more descriptive, and I think movies are just more like visual of how the director kind of sees it and wants to put it back at us.
It also reminds me of like the Twilight series, for example, because it's a book series but also a movie series. And I know that there is a lot of conflicting opinions about the movie because like you can read the book and you can feel some type of way when you're reading the book. And like I was saying earlier, that is very individualized. Like I can like take this one way, but the author wants it to be another way. So once the author puts it into a movie, a lot of people are like upset that it wasn't what they wanted the movie to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they pictured it in their head differently than the
Mhm.
director
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads into my last
Focus.
quote by Kaylee Wynn from her article from the John Hopkins newsletter, in which she talks about how one's personal taste in like any form of art doesn't discredit the artist's like efficacy or like their feelings that they put into it. Just because one person may not like it doesn't take away from what they've done.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, just because everyone else says the movie sucks, you can say it's awesome. It could be the best movie ever.
Because it's contents, I feel like you can actually emotionally relate to it in a way more than
Yeah.
someone else can. So,
Right.
Any other big points? No? All right. Well, I think that we are going to be wrapping this episode up. Thank
Later, folks.
everyone for watching.
Thank
I've
you
been
so
your
much.
host, AJ, and I've been with Adrian, Donovan, and Camille. And again, I'd like to thank everyone for watching, and we will see you guys next time.